Okay, so I know you've been sitting in bed at night dreaming about building yourself a 2J. Okay, and then you've been trying to convince your wife that it's a good idea to put a 2JZ in one of your cars. But one thing you haven't done is you haven't sat down and figured out what it costs. Okay, so I've been cleaning up my shop a little bit and going and getting all my parts together of everything I have and, you know, all the stuff that I'm really not going to use anymore. And I thought it'd be a good idea to do like a little rundown and kind of do a breakdown maybe on the screen here of like a running total of what it costs to build one of these, or just to put one of these in your car. I mean, it's very deceiving when you see like on Facebook Marketplace, you see a 2JZ GE for sale for like $1,200. And you're like, dang, $1,200, I can buy that engine and throw it in my car. Well, people just, it's a rabbit hole that just continues to go further and further and further down, that it just adds up so quick. So, like I said, I want to do a little kind of breakdown and do a little running total here of what this stuff costs, okay? So sure, you can get yourself, oh, and by the way, this engine here, I'll put a link in the description of the video I have of doing a leak down test on this engine, just to show you guys how the health of it. And this is a very healthy engine. You can do a compression test, but compression tests will kind of fool you. So a leak down is the best way to go. It'll show you leaky valves, you know, it'll just give you a better overall understanding of what's going on in the engine. And this one came out really good. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So, okay, so you found your 2JZGE on Facebook Marketplace for $1,200, or you even got a good deal and got it for $1,000, okay? Well, what's the health of it? Does it need valve seals? Does it need a new timing belt? Does it need front and rear main seals? Is it a rear sump? Okay. What does it come with? So for starters, let's just start with this one. This one just came as a GE with a GE manifold that somewhere over here, just everything was stock. Okay. Basically the way it came out of, I think, like a GS300 or an SC300 or whatever. And, so I had to go, and so you got the $1,200 for the engine. I went ahead and had to get a rear sump pan. The rear sump pan cost me, I think I got this for like $500, and $500 is like a good deal, okay? And it didn't have hardware or anything like that, so I had to buy hardware. So we got $1,200, we've got $500 for the pan. All the hardware, I think, was another like $60 for that. So that's the rear sump pan, okay? On this engine, just as a precaution, I did all new GSC valve seals on this one. I have another video on that too. So these are the valve seals here that you use. These are really good. I have those on this JZ and they work great. So you got those. I think I paid another maybe 40 or $50 for that, okay? Timing belt is going to cost you around $75 to $80. That's even if you just get like a stock one, or I think a Gates is a little more than that. Okay, so we'll add that. Front and rear main seals aren't that expensive. I did do the rear main seal on this. I did not do the front main because it was in such good condition. So I did not do that. I pulled everything off to do the timing belt on this, so I was able to kind of inspect it really good, and it was like really fresh. So I didn't do that. The stock water pump was fine, so I put that back on there. What else? The valve covers that came with this were pretty beat up, so I ordered new valve covers. These were like $80 on eBay. The turbo manifold, this is just a single standard turbo manifold you can get on eBay. This is the thick wall, okay? And it comes with a provision for a 46 millimeter wastegate. That was $500. The turbo itself, this is a BorgWarner SXE billet wheel turbo that I had this turbo, but I'll go ahead and put a price on it just so you guys understand that if it's something you're gonna do, you gotta pay for that. This was an $800 turbo, but we'll call that like 600 bucks. If you can find one used, good. That's about what they go for, is about 600 bucks for a 64 millimeter Borg-Warner billet wheel turbo. Journal bearing. Okay, journal bearings are good. You don't have to get a ball bearing turbo. I made close to 700 on this turbo in the other car. Okay, and the nice thing about journal bearing turbos is you can beat the heck out of them and they don't care. All right, so moving on from there, these are the R8 coils that were in this car. They work great, like I said, all the way up to 700 horsepower. But anywhere past that, you'll start having issues with these coils. They don't provide enough spark energy. But for this here, this is a stock GE, which, you know, it has the thick rods, got the good pistons in it and all that. These are fine. So I think you can get these for around $35, $40 a piece. So I don't know, we'll call this 140 bucks, whatever. Okay, what else? Intake manifold. This is your standard, you know, like eBay manifold with the billet runners and the sheet metal intake here with a 90 millimeter throttle body. So you can get these anywhere from $350 to $550. So we'll go in the middle there. We'll say 400 bucks, okay? Comes with a fuel rail, all that. Your motor mounts, I don't know what kind of motor mounts you're gonna use. These are CX Racing mounts that they're made for a Datsun, which, you know, I paid like $300 for these used, but 300 bucks is about what you're gonna pay for any other swap mounts. Say you're putting this in a Tacoma, or you're putting it in an S chassis. You're gonna pay about $350, 400 bucks for a good set of mounts, okay? So let's add that in there. What else? You're gonna need injectors, okay? So these here, these are the injectors that fit this intake. There's the part number right there. These are genuine Bosch, so you're gonna be paying, let's say around $400 for 6 injectors. That's about what the Bosch injectors cost, okay? Now, if you go with like ID or anything like that, now you're looking at like $650, $700. So like an ID 1050 injector would be around $600 for those, okay? You're gonna need a fuel pressure regulator. So this is a really nice one. That's a DishWorks fuel pressure regulator. You can get like eBay ones. I used an eBay fuel pressure regulator for a long time and it worked fine. So I think I paid like 70 bucks for this, 70 or 80 bucks. And it worked really good. It's got the big ORB fittings on it and I never had an issue with it until I started running dual pumps. Once I ran dual pumps, it couldn't pass enough fuel and I was getting fuel pressure spikes. So if you're running like a single pump, you know, for this, like a DishWorks in-tank pump or whatever, an inexpensive regulator will work. Okay, so you got all that. Hopefully I'm doing like a little running total here on the screen so you guys can see. But okay, fuel feed or not fuel, oil feed line. So you got to get all your fittings. This is just a, you know, I got this off of Amazon. I think it's All Star Performance. It's a -4 line, and you got to get some fittings. So I have a T fitting here that will. You know, once you get your BSPT to 4AN, then this will plug into there and you come off of here with a fuel pressure gauge, or I'm sorry, I keep saying oil pressure gauge, an oil pressure gauge right here. So, you know, you can run a mechanical gauge, or if you don't want one, you just take that off basically and then go straight to it. And that'll be your oil feed line. And I cut like a stock cover here, so that'll fit nicely behind here, okay? Kind of hides it, keeps it tucked away, looks good. And by the way, on these covers here, just to make them look good, I used like truck bed liner on them. Truck bed liner is really good. It handles heat really well. I did the same thing on this. That's what this is too, truck bed liner. And A lot of people told me that it wouldn't work, but it does work great. You know, I mean, truck bed liner is really tough. It can handle a lot of heat. I mean, think of the abuse it gets in a truck. So yeah, that's all that. And it looks really nice, kind of like gives it a good finish and durable. I think I've already mentioned the R8 coils. You're gonna need to wire those up. So you're gonna get yourself some connectors. So you can get these off like Amazon, eBay, whatever. Just R8 coil connectors, and you wire them up, you know? And I recommend that, like whenever you wire something up, just get new connectors with new pins. It makes sense not to like splice old stuff in there. It's just better. So I did do fresh gaskets for the valve covers. So you got to factor that in. I think that was like 35, 40 bucks for that. Hardware. I mean, basically on this, I reused the stock hardware. Okay. So you can get away with, getting some decently cheap hardware. The intake itself came with hardware, so that was all good. These are -6 lines. I recommend bumping that up to -8. That's just my opinion. -8 coming to the fuel rail and going back to the tank. So you want them both. I know a lot of people will do -8 up and -6 back, but again, like the fuel pressure regulator issue I had, also had to do with this smaller line returning to the fuel tank. So if you want to really add a lot of fuel and you're adding dual pumps and all that, you want that fuel to be able to get back to the tank without building any pressure. Okay. Anyway, that's besides the point. What else? Yeah, on this one, I deleted the EGR and I made my own little plug, this little brass plug here. It's just a press fit. That works great. I did the same thing on that engine and never had an issue with it. So you just delete that. That goes right into this runner here. So you want to plug that. Otherwise, you'll get your exhaust leaking out the back of your engine there. So what else? That's pretty much it as far as the engine goes. Then you're going to want to figure out flywheel or pressure plate or flex plates rather. Whatever you're going to do with that, an adapter, those things are $1,000 for an adapter if you wanted to do like a Turbo 400 or a TH350. The adapter is $1,000. Pretty much any adapter for a CD or, a ZF trans, they're all $1,000. So factor $1,000 for an adapter. Okay. Intercooler piping. All right. You got to get all the intercooler piping. You got to find somebody who can TIG weld. If you're a TIG welder yourself, you got to TIG weld all the intercooler piping. Yeah, and you're also gonna need an intercooler too. So this intercooler I bought used for around 200 bucks. That's a Mishimoto R-Line intercooler. So you'll need an intercooler. Like I said, all of the lines I used on these, I got these like eBay quick couplers. These aren't too bad of a price, but they do work great. And it keeps, boost leaks down to a minimum. But those are again, those are probably $30 or $40 a piece. And you're gonna need quite a few of those, like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 of those you'll need. And then some adapters, because obviously you're going from, this is, I believe, 2.5 or 2 to 3. So you would need a 2 to 3 adapter. And then from here, you would need a 3 to a 90mm adapter. So factor in adapters. What are you gonna do for a downpipe? You need a downpipe, right? So this is Borg Warner uses like a special fitting, a special adapter called a Marmon flange. So you would have to buy a Marmon flange. You would have to buy the clamp. Usually it comes with it. And then whatever piping you're gonna need. This is 3-inch. So you would need to make yourself a downpipe to whatever exhaust you're using. Stainless steel exhaust tubing is not too expensive. You can get it for maybe 100 bucks for a kit like this. This is just some stuff I used to practice welding. This is really old stuff, but yeah, you're gonna need that. You're going to, what else? I mean, it just goes on and on. You know, like, okay, so you do a transmission, what clutch are you gonna use? You gotta buy a clutch. Clutches can be, they can range from $200 to $1,000, okay? You're gonna do an automatic transmission. Are you gonna use, what kind of converter are you gonna use? A good converter is $1,000, okay? So there you go, you got that. I mean, the starter, here's a starter for this. I'll throw that in. Whoever buys this, I'll throw the starter in. So, are you gonna do an oil cooler? This one I'm not. This is just gonna be, I got an adapter to screw into the oil port here and just run a filter right on, just like a normal car here. So I did that. But if you wanna run an oil cooler, that's a couple $100s for that, okay? This cover here was melted, so I had to buy a new cover. That was, I think, $80 for the cover, I believe. What else? I think I mentioned the injectors. You're gonna pay, again, like $400 for those. And I can't think of much else that you would need. You know, you're obviously gonna need an ECU. I do not recommend trying to make a GTE ECU work, because even if you find one, they're gonna be $700-800 for that, and you're gonna struggle with it. So I recommend getting a standalone. So budget a couple $1,000s for a standalone. You know, even if you go with an ECU Master standalone, the ECU Master standalone is like $1,200, but what about the sensors? What about your wideband? What about, your intake air temperature sensor? What about your wiring harness? Are you gonna make it yourself? Are you gonna buy one from Wiring Specialties or Tweaked? I mean, that's another $1,000, okay? It goes on and on and on, all right? On this car here, on this engine here, I'm deleting the distributor, so I gotta make a plate for this, or you can buy one. And then you're gonna have to figure out a trigger for your cam, or you can run it in wasted spark. You can do either, okay? So anyway, the list goes on and on and on. Yeah, hopefully you guys kind of get an understanding of the total I have here on the screen. And you can look at that number and factor even more, because there's a lot of stuff I missed. Little bits and pieces here and there will definitely nickel and dime you to death. Like cooling system. What are you gonna do? What kind of cooling system are you gonna run? You're gonna put some AN fittings on here? Okay, you gotta buy those. What kind of radiator are you gonna use? You gotta get a radiator for this. It goes on and on, okay? So don't just think you're gonna buy a GE off of eBay or Facebook and then throw it in there and you're good to go. That's not the way it works. So hopefully you guys got some good info out of this. I'll be listing this engine for sale, probably the way it sits, with the turbo, the manifold, the intake, coils, everything that you see here, rear sump pan. I mean, even if I sold this, say, for $4,000, if I sold this for $4,000, someone's getting a good deal. Okay, just the way it sits. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something on this video, and make sure you do like a sheet, do a running total of what this thing's gonna cost you. That way you have an idea and you're not surprised, and then you don't end up selling a half-done project, okay? All right, guys, that's gonna do it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will check you all later.